Hello, Garland Nixon here with Dr. Radhika Desai. And what we're going to talk about is the new Trump administration and how he's going to confront the challenges in the New World Order and how they will respond. Let's talk. Hello, Dr. Desai. It's in Sao Paulo right now doing all kinds of interesting things that smart people do. and But at any rate, so what we're going to talk about is, and I think it's important, the context that we're going to discuss the Trump administration is when Donald Trump was president for 4 years, and there was a particular international economic dynamic. 4 years later, there is a very different economic, I would argue, dynamic. And part of it, of course, was driven by the Trump administration, the Biden administration. That basically the deterioration of hegemonic power in the U.S. and the attempt to hold on to that. Now, Dr. Desai, looking at the Trump, listening to the Trump rhetoric, looking at the Trump choices for his administration, my assumption is he's going to kind of move forward like he did before. That idea of American exceptionalism and strength and bullying, and we'll force you to do what we want. And that's what created this dynamic, which would lead me to think that it will only speed up the things that are going. Anyway, your thoughts on, let's start here. What are the differences between the 4 years he was there and the way you could deal with economics as the leader of the empire now, and after 4 years of the Biden administration putting everything on steroids, and how he will have to deal with the world now and how they see the U.S. different?
Well, you know the old saying, history never repeats itself, though sometimes it rhymes. And I wonder if it will even rhyme this time, because I think that the situation is very different, as you were emphasizing. And the differences are at many levels. Obviously, one of them is, we are now in a post-COVID economy where the damage to the American economy that has been done by COVID had never been repaired is even greater. The sheer number of tariffs that now Trump is claiming that he's going to impose has multiplied. It's no longer just China, it's the BRICS. It's no longer about trade, it's also about the dollar, etc. There's also, of course, the fact that compared to last time, when Trump had to deal with what remained of the Republican establishment, he had to appease them to some extent. So his policies were a little bit more mainstream than he might have liked, or had to be. And some of the figures he appointed had to be a little bit more mainstream. But this time around, he has basically vanquished the Republican Party establishment. He has his own, essentially the Republican Party has become his party. And one of the things we are hearing a lot is that among the hundreds of appointments he's allowed to make as president-elect, a lot of these appointments are going to family members and members of his inner circle, whether it's the father-in-law of his daughters or father-in-laws of his daughters or what have you. I mean, so these things are multiplying. And also, I would say that the appointment of people like Musk and the role that people like Peter Thiel and others are playing also means that, and one reads in the papers that Silicon Valley, for example, which has traditionally not been enamored of Trump, being kind of a liberal in every sense of the word, they are coming around to Trump for a variety of reasons. So it's a very complex scenario composed of the change situation, Trump's own strong position within the Republican Party, but also then made more complex by the state of the American economy and how the various CEOs are lining up and so on.
Yeah, I think there's a point I didn't think of, because my thoughts were all how the parties outside of the US will react. But as you said, Trump has not only vanquished the Republican Party, the Democratic Party, I'll put it differently, has smashed itself to pieces. So rather than being able to focus on opposing, they're trying to think about opposing him, but they're trying to pick up the pieces. They're looking internally and say, how do we survive this? So now you have a Donald Trump who, to me, sees everything as a nail. I'm the strong man and I have to pound everything into submission. And he has really internally, the powers that be are trying to pick themselves up off the floor, like the boxer who's laying on the floor reaching for his mouthpiece. That's kind of the way I see the powers. And he's surrounded by a bunch of libertarians, which tells me the austerity monsters will be very active in the United States. Can you hear me?
I'm losing bits of you, so I don't know why that is, whether it's my connection or yours. I think mine looks okay.
Yeah. But at any rate, but yeah, it was to me what I was mainly talking about is the powers that would normally oppose him are in disarray, and he seems to have a strong
Yes.
libertarian contingent in his camp, which smacks of
Now, I want to
austerity.
come back.
Go ahead.
Absolutely. I want to come back to all of these points. I mean, we need to return to what the rest of the world will make of Trump. And
Okay.
there's many stories to tell there. But I first want to finish this internal situation, because I think there are two things that you said that are really very important. One is that the Democratic Party it would appear, in something of a meltdown. So the extent to which they will be able to oppose Trump's more, shall we say, maverick appointments will be probably limited, although we'll have to wait and see. I don't know. And I think it also depends, really. I mean, what we are also looking at, with things like the appointment of Elon Musk and even Trump's, of course, the appointment of a Treasury Secretary directly from Wall Street, preferably from Goldman Sachs, has been a long tradition for the last many decades of neoliberalism and financialization. But nevertheless, I think that the more direct presence of the American corporate capitalist class will in fact constitute difference, and what it will represent is a breakdown of politics, because normally CEOs don't have to do politics themselves. They can get on with being CEOs while trusting and being able to trust that their representatives in the high offices, whether in Congress, in the White House, etc., will take care of all the things that need to be taken care of on the political front. And it may very well be that this mechanism, which is kind of the established form of bourgeois politics or capitalist politics, corporate capitalist politics, is breaking down. So there's also that. But so the first point is, as I say, that the ability of the establishment, the Republican establishment was long vanquished by Trump. Now the Democratic establishment is also facing the abyss, if one may put it that way. So the ability of the US political establishment to prevent Trump from going the whole hog on, as a sort of maverick, will be very limited. And the second point I want to make is even more interesting. Some years ago, when I wrote my book, Capitalism, Coronavirus and War, in it, I quoted a very interesting article by published by the Brookings Institute and written by a political scientist, I think, called William Galston. And he differentiated between what he called the house-trained capital established are at home. They are used to the way in which the system works, and they have made the system and they are at home with it. And the maverick capitalist class, or the cowboy capitalist class, if one may put it that way, people like Elon Musk, Peter Thiel, they are very different. And it seems as though the latter are completely now behind Trump. So much so, and of course, their move has also persuaded some of the more establishment members of the corporate capitalist class to take Trump more seriously and go along there, because it seems as though today, the American capitalist class, having even after 45 odd years of neoliberalism, austerity, deregulation, they want more. And, I've been reading a little bit about these people, and it seems as though, in the old days, we used to make a distinction. Well, not in the old days, we still make a distinction in political theory, or in more generally in understanding capitalist society, between what is called imperium, or political rule, and dominium, which is private ownership. And it seems as though many of these capitalists want to dissolve the distinction between the two. They want to create fiefdoms, possibly even countries, in which corporate capitalists own as well as rule at the same time. So we're looking at a really bizarre scenario. Once upon a time, it was the stuff of sci-fi novels, but now it seems as though we might have a show like this running in Washington.
Now let's looking at exterior. So now Trump said, it's everybody gets tariffs, everybody gets punishment. It's, well, if you don't do what we want, if you try to get away from the dollar, tariffs. If you do this, tariffs, tariffs, tariffs. Canada tariffs, Mexico tariffs, everyone tariffs. It seems that Trump has gotten hung up on this term. I don't know how much he really understands this, to be quite honest. But it seems like Trump is hung up on this tariffs term, and he seems someone has convinced him, or he's convinced himself, that he can utilize this tool for everyone. And even non-economists like me can say, well, if someone says, I'm getting away from the dollar because you're using it as a weapon, and your answer is, if you try to do that, I'll use it as a weapon. I think you're going down a rabbit hole to, anyway, your thoughts.
Yeah. So, again, on this tariffs business, there are a number of points to understand. First of all, it's important to remember that Trump is threatening tariffs as part of a sort of a vote-getting line that he developed during this election campaign. And the relationship between the vote-getting lines that Trump has to sort of roll out in order to win elections, as he did in 2016 and again now, there's a big difference between what he promises on the hustings and what he actually does in office. So I would say that, yes, of course, last time he did impose some tariffs, but so he imposed some tariffs on China, but he did not prevent the rerouting of that trade via other countries, whether it's Mexico or Vietnam or what have you. So those goods still kept coming into the United States. And as we've talked previously, Garland, the import of these goods from China and also from some other countries at very, very competitive prices, at very, very low prices, has been an absolutely indispensable ingredient of keeping inflation low. And so people remember that under Trump, the economy was better than what it became under Biden. So, but it's important to remember that it's not anything Trump has done. It's not like the magic of Trump's economic policies that made the economy better in between 2016 and 2020 than it subsequently became. So that's the first thing, is that he has made these promises, and he is going to continue to make all these noises at least until the 20th of January. Then the hard business, the hard slog of actually administering the United States comes into play, and then we'll have to see what happens, because so there are many things mitigating against the implementation of the sorts of tariffs that Trump wants to implement, whether it's for trade reasons or for reasons. Those are one that, of course, if he slaps the kinds of tariffs that he's
we're losing you a little. Okay, sorry, we were losing you a little bit. You said
this will directly increase inflation, both by increasing producer, and by it'll increase prices both for producers who are buying inputs and for consumers who are, because the tariffs will directly increase the prices of everything that they are buying. And what will that do to inflation? It will skyrocket, and naturally, people like the Treasury Secretary Besant, as he will be then, will have to say, President Trump, I don't think this is a very good idea, and as will lots of other people. Secondly, of course, many of the CEOs who have foreign investments abroad or supply chains abroad will be against imposing such tariffs, because this will affect their sales in the United States and so on. So they are going to say, well, President Trump, surely there is a better way, etc., etc. And then President Trump, who does not at all mind being unpredictable, inconsistent, he will say, oh, I changed my mind, I'm going to do something else now, and so on. There's a third thing which is also very important to keep in mind, and that is that the United States share of world trade is now much smaller than it used to be, partly because of the growth of China, but also more generally growth elsewhere. So, the US imports now a little less than 16% of the total imports of the whole world, which means that, okay, 16% is not nothing. But supposing Trump were to inflict the sorts of tariffs that he's claiming, the rest of the world will, of course, suffer a very sharp trade shock. But you know what? It's quite possible that if these other countries who face the tariffs act swiftly, intelligently, deftly, they will suffer that sharp trade shock will also be short, in the sense that they will find other places to send their goods to. And I'll say one other thing. This is a trend that's also ongoing. One of the things of neoliberal policy for the last many decades was that they kept saying to third world countries, oh, you must have an export-oriented strategy. You must export your goods. You must exploit your which is, of course, complete nonsense, because the whole point of this export-oriented strategy would have been to keep your wages low. But the whole point of development is to actually improve the standards of living of your people and therefore increase wages. So this is completely wrong strategy. And I think that what countries really need is to consume more of what they produce themselves by increasing the wages of their people and so on. And I think that this trend is already happening for China as well as for at home, and intensifies. Trump's United States will be left high and dry, while the rest of the world actually experiences rather benign consequences of Trump's silly actions. So that's about the tariff issue.
You're breaking up again. Okay. Yeah, you're breaking up a bit. It's we can hear most of it, but we lose you here and there, and you come back. Well, that's the other part of it. Trump is claiming the things if he did what he would do, what he claims he's going to do. Well, let me put it to you like this: if Trump, the implication in Trump's proposed policy against China, against Mexico, Canada, is that we can make it without them. The implication is we'll fix you. You want our economy. We'll shut off your access to our economy, your access to our economy, your access. It's like if the game doesn't go the way I want, I'll take my basketball and go home, and I'll leave you all standing on the court. Well, I can't play, but you guys will just get another basketball, and you'll continue the game, and I'll be out of the game. And so exactly. He's saying, I will just. It implies that the rest of the people can't play the game unless we let them. And the rest of the people, exactly. They have enough people to play, and they have another ball. And we're the only ones that won't be playing. Go ahead. Oh, can't hear you.
Yeah.
Oh, I think we're losing you, Dr. Desai. Oh, I think we're losing you right now. We're not.
Threats have been home, but the others now they're not reliant on Trump's or the US's basketball. They have plenty of basketballs of their own, and they will have a very nice game while Trump goes and sulks. While Trump takes the US and the basketball and goes and sulks.
Yes, I think we don't have a very good connection, so I think we're going to have to reschedule because you're in and out, and this is very, very important. So just hopefully will you be back available next week?
I'm moving around next week. Do you want to try for Saturday or Sunday, or is that when you don't work, or it won't work?
Sunday would work for me. Sunday would work.
Sunday would be fine. Sunday I have a meeting from about 11 to 1 Chicago time. So that will be from about 12 to 2 your time in Eastern time. Other than that, I could be available like earlier in the morning, for example, this sort of time on
How
Sunday.
about we do 9 a.m. Eastern time Sunday?
That sounds
Is that
great.
okay? Great, because yes, this is an important discussion, and I really want to have it. And we're missing a lot of things, and the small
I know.
nuances are critical to the understanding. So okay, we'll jump off now,
Exactly.
and we'll be back on. Everyone who's watching, we'll be back on 9 a.m. Monday, and we'll redo this whole. We'll start from scratch and redo the whole thing because this is an important discussion. And so we'll and I'll have time to advertise a little more. So Monday
That will
morning
be
9 a.m. I mean, excuse me, Sunday morning 9 a.m. Great, thank you.
yeah. Bye-bye. Yeah.
Bye. All right, everyone. Thank you very much. Yeah, it's important. She's in Sao Paulo. Her connection isn't very good, and Dr. Desai is really brilliant. And I think, as you can tell by the direction of the discussion here, it's important, and I think it's going to be a very different discussion than a lot of people are having. It's not a, oh, I hate Trump, he's an idiot, he's evil, he's an idiot, or oh, I love Trump, blah blah blah. It's an intellectual discussion about the dynamics that the Trump administration is facing in the world, and also about the internal dynamics that he's facing and how the world has changed. And so I think it's going to be a lot of fun. Let everybody know that we're going to be back on. Now, here's what you need to understand. It's in 1 hour and about 20 minutes, which is 10 a.m. Eastern Standard Time, I'm going to have on Professor Richard Wolff. And we're going to talk about some of this stuff too. Let me look and see what in the heck we're going to talk about anyway. Dr. Wolff, tell you in a second. WOLFF. I think we're going to more specifically a couple of things. The immigration. If in fact we were to deport X amount of million immigrants without taking a position on it, good, bad, right, or wrong, what would the economic effects be of getting rid of lots of immigrants? And we're also going to be talk similar to this, the economics of these tariffs, how they work, and what it would mean. So we're going to have a more technical discussion economically. And then Sunday morning, Dr. Desai and I will get into how the world is going to respond to how the world is different now economically, how that's going to affect the Trump administration's abilities to manipulate the international economy. So thanks a lot, everybody. And 10 a.m., Dr. Richard Wolff, it's going to be great. So Sunday morning, if you can get back, that'd be great. Thanks. And sorry about that, but when you do a lot of work with people internationally, then you're going to have times where sometimes you have to reschedule because they how these, if anybody who's ever tried to do video from a hotel, what happens a lot of times is you end up trying to go online when lots of other people in the hotel are going online, and you just don't have the bandwidth. So Sunday morning 9 a.m. Thanks.